So we were talking about the devil and about coming to terms with your dark side. Denying or trying to defeat or trying to trap this dark side, this devil, never works. In a way, I'm not completely convinced by the method that is used by Alcoholics Anonymous. But there is one thing that's pretty wise about what they do, which is that the very first thing you have to do is admit that you're an alcoholic, right? And so if you admit that there is this thing and that it's not something evil that has been forced upon you from outside, it's not spiritual forces that have come down to torment you, and it's not a product of something foreign to you. It could have been warped by something foreign to you, by elements of your childhood, by elements of your early life, by things that have happened to you. And mainly you have to remember, you did the warping yourself. You're the one that made this devil into a dark and terrible god. But if you acknowledge that it is yourself, then this is the first great step in overcoming the darkness of it and embracing yourself in wholeness. There's this mentality that some people have about the devil that obviously generates a great deal of fear. And I've seen even, in fact, people who were considerable experts on the tarot in many elements, that when they get to this card and to this imagery, that it locks up their brain somehow. And so they either try to deny the devil side of the devil card and try to say, oh no, well, this means something else and it's not actually bad. Or they freak out about it so much that they're not really capable of making a meaningful interpretation of the card. And a lot of people will associate the idea of a devil with this concept of exorcism. What you have to do is cast out this devil from within yourself, right? But in fact, if you're going to compare this process that I'm trying to explain about embracing with some kind of a ritual, the ritual to compare it to isn't exorcism, it's confession. It's confession in the original sense of what confession was really like, and not necessarily how it's done today in the Catholic Church or in other sorts of institutions, but rather that there was a time when it was understood that someone who was an initiate and who was going through this process, this spiritual path, even before initiation, it still applies, that it is a process of wanting to transform yourself. Then if they were working with this sincerity in their heart, the mere act of recognizing something, of making this confession, of saying what is truth about you, transforms and liberates, immediately transforms and liberates all of what you're doing that is warping you. So the original confession was that it was in fact a complete liberation from the things you were doing that were creating darkness within you. And it's based on the reality that darkness is not something that you fight. Light doesn't fight the darkness, and light doesn't drive out the darkness. Because darkness is really just a kind of illusion. It's something that's, at most, it's a temporary state. And as soon as the light comes, then everything is still actually the same. There's no change in the environment, except that now the light is there, and everything that was there that was part of that darkness is now part of that light. So it's a transformation. It's not a driving out or a fighting or a pushing away or a conquering or anything like that. So you regret nothing, you fight nothing, you just enlighten it. our awareness renders the demons inside of ourselves, impotent to cause you harm, because it's your ignorance that's allowing this harm to happen. And the spiritual love and discipline of consciousness leads you to be able to unite with this helpful spirit, which is what this freedom, this naturalness becomes. It's a part of you that, for some people, they'll have made one part of themselves dark, and others will have made another part of themselves dark, which is why what to some people seems like a sin to other people isn't, right? The point is that you've gone and you've made certain things dark inside of you that don't have to be dark, that they can be helpful to you. Now, I've been talking about this rejection of the darkness, and there's this other side, which is kind of this idolatry, you could say, the worship of the great god Pan. The ultimate devil worship is the idolatry of the self as it is, right? Of the idea that you are that you are right as you are, and the universe should revolve around that, rather than this idea that you are right as you are because you are allowing yourself to flow with the universe. This is what can sometimes be termed a dark brother, a master of the abyss, a black magician, is someone who shuts themselves in and says, I'm going to dominate the world with this darkness that is me. Right? And we don't usually manifest it in such dramatic ways. But really, whenever we continue with activities that are self-destructive to us, especially when you get to the state where you recognize that these activities are self-destructive, but you're unwilling to change them because you want life to change around you rather than you changing around life, then that's the ultimate idolatry, which is also something that's overcome in exactly the same way, because what you're really doing there is this kind of victimhood suffering, that you've surrendered to this idea that you can't be bothered to change, that you don't want to change, that this change isn't possible even though you're suffering. And you recognize the destructiveness of what you're doing, but you don't want to accept and release this thing that you've trapped in there and made into a monster that you're now sacrificing yourself to. So you've let yourself be bound. And so there are some people that are bound and that are struggling with these chains and thinking that they're going to overcome the force that's binding them. And there are other people that are bound and that have kind of given up to being bound. And in fact, the message of the devil card is that both of these states can be transformed, and they're transformed through love, through uniting in yourself. And when you transmute and unite this devil, this Pan, within yourself, what happens is this incredible release of energy, because it's this great collapse of all of these conditioned ideas and conditioned structures. It's this great release of all of this energy, this massive amount of energy that you were putting into propping up the walls of that cage that you might have tried to see as a battle, or that you might have tried to see as a temple to your darkness. But in either case, you're propping up this great god Pan. You've been feeding him with all this energy and trying to lock him in, and really you've been imprisoning yourself in it. And when you stop doing that, suddenly there's this flash of lightning, this release of everything. And that flash of lightning is what gets represented in the next card, which we're going to talk about following this, which is the Tower.